Güçlü Oyuncular Konaklamada Yeni Dönem panelimizle devam ediyoruz. Bundan sonraki panelimizde kongrelerimizle ilgili panelimiz. Şu anki panelimizde bizlere eşlik etmek üzere Servotel Direktörü Robin Keste'yi, bir dakika, Tom Chalmers'ı, Avruko'nun Avrupa Genel Müdürü, Leading Hotels of the World Başkan Yardımcısı Deniz Ömürgönülsen'i ve Slow Hospitality CEO'sunu Serdar Kutucu'yu sahneye davet ediyorum. Bizlerle beraber olduğunuz için çok teşekkür ediyoruz.
Stand off. We take you in the middle.
Come again, yes.
Take it.
You're our guest, so you have to sit in
Sesim
the middle.
geliyor değil mi? Ses geliyor. Bu noktadan sonra İngilizce devam edeceğiz. Aramızda Türkçe konuşmayan misafirimiz var. So, hello everyone.
Hello.
As you can see, we have the most curated group of people here from their fashion as well. So we'll have an interesting conversation today, speaking about new trends in the hospitality. So if you want, I'll make an introduction and then we'll move on from there.
Sounds good.
So let's kick off with the pandemic. I mean, it's almost over. It's been a trend-making, trend-accelerating phenomenon and proving some actually very relevant trends for us for the hospitality spectrum. However, we should be very careful with that. To consider something as a trend needs a lot of analysis. We need to plot them and measure them very carefully, as some of them may be permanent and others very COVID-related and temporary. For instance, we hear things like business and MICE segment being gone. However, it's just because we cannot measure it yet, and we didn't have enough longevity to understand if actually they've been diminished or it was a temporary phenomenon. Convertibly, we've been also seeing many trends even before the pandemic, such as the rise in authenticity, the focus on experience, the blurry line between the residential and the hotel, working remotely, etc. So it's very important to draw the line between a hype and a trend. And that needs a lot of analysis, a lot of research time invested, which is the reason I guess companies like ourselves exist. So today we'll be mostly focusing on the leisure trends, as for the past 2 years we didn't see any, I would say a lot of business travel behaviors. With this in mind, we've been able to get a hint of the consumers, understand their traits. So I want to kick off with that actually, and ask Deniz, how would you describe this new traveler, especially in the leisure market, so that it's been telling a lot of lessons for the other markets as well?
Sure. Thank you. First of all, I'm Deniz Ömürgönülsen. Actually born and raised here in Turkey, and then I was in the States for 16 years, but I'm happy to be back home. I oversee membership for an organization called the Leading Hotels of the World. We have 400 hotels, all independently owned and managed worldwide, about 80 countries. And to Robin's question, and we've been around for 95 years, so I think it's a very good distinction when we talk about hype versus trend, because we are the type of organization that actually understands trends quite well and makes sure that we do the best for our owners, who are mostly, as I mentioned, independent owners. So to answer your question specifically, how we define our travelers is that we call them curious travelers. It's all about the mindset versus how old they are or where they live. When we talk about the curious travelers, it's about what they are expecting from life. And that's how we curate our portfolio of hotels, with that traveler in mind. So it's all about authenticity, it's all about location. Obviously, we'll talk a little bit about standards are important. They are table stakes in the world that we operate, but it's all about what the curious travelers are actually looking for in their experience.
Very well. Anything that you would like to add, like in terms of like this decision-making process on the leisure traveler, Sardar?
Well, I think we always refer to the pandemic and COVID as a changing thing, but reality is that, you know, what is happening now has been already, you know, recognized before the COVID. I think that, I mean, with the last 15, if not 20 years, travel becoming very easy and accessible, price-wise and also mobility. People have become more and more mature in travel experiences. So obviously your demand and expectations grow with your knowledge. And like in many other industries, things like sustainability have just simply become common sense for luxury hotels. So we're kind of making it up now after the pandemic, saying that, you know, the world is changing, and yes, it is, because now we're actually walking the talk, but, you know, studies and many researchers have already seen that people want to take more conscious decisions about where they go. And yes, they want to actually connect with the right mindset. It's not about, you know, luxury defined by the product. It's luxury defined by the people you meet and the experience you have. So I do think that the pandemic has helped to accelerate these needs, and that there is a different understanding, not only in the operator side, but also in the investor side, for concepts that actually before maybe have not made really sense because they don't run in the regular KPIs. But reality is that those hotels that don't see this evolution moving forward to accompany the future guests' needs will certainly not see the business that they are planning today.
Actually, straight to my second point. I mean, we're seeing this like transition over the past years, even before the pandemic, like from very tangible centric products towards like what we call intangible and mostly like experiential. But how do we supply that experience, and how do we actually conceive, sustain it, Tom?
Good question. I think from our side, so we're a design group working across the globe, brand, physical spaces, digital spaces. I think, you know, there's different ways to achieve that. I think the obvious one is to try to bring in programs. I think experience now is almost a commodity for some guests. I think, you know, previously it may have been, you know, purchasing an item. Now actually to purchase an experience and gather a list of experiences and tick the boxes is what some guests want to do. I think so, you know, design can help facilitate the experience. At the end of the day, I think it has to be a really great meld between operator, designer, owner, you know, some kind of local curator. So I think this kind of cocktail, this mixture is essential. Not one of those is going to be successful. I think it's going to be a great combination of the 3 or 4 factors. I think design and construction, you know, is generally seen as quite permanent. Experience is non-permanent, right? So I think there's a bit of a contrast there and a competition between the two. I think if you create a space for a certain experience today, next week it's probably going to be invalid. So I think that's an interesting point to try to resolve, I think, going forward as well.
And just one additional question on that, like how do you sustain it though? Because to keep up with that, both like staff-wise, finding that talent, sustaining it, and especially scale it, repeat it, it sounds challenging. Do you have a formula for that, Sardar?
Well, I wouldn't say it's a formula, but it's definitely the most important topic. And to, you know, find talent and grow people in the organization is key, absolutely key in the hospitality industry. And I mean, we're doing our very best. For example, we launched the website and the brand a year ago for no reason, meaning we are not actually having any commercial reason. We're not selling rooms yet because we're still with 7, 8 projects, we're still in the development phase, if not even planning phase. But what has happened is that through the content we create and grow, we're actually receiving like initiative applications almost weekly. And we're able to go in hotel management schools like École Hôtelière Lausanne and others and partner with these institutions to really source people and talents, which we mainly want to engage through the content and not by a salary or a success in performance in the financial side.
So you become more aspirational for them.
Absolutely, and I think that's totally key to find the right people.
Exactly. So going back to that non-formulaic, basically, version of this new product, basically going towards a unique, experiential, non-static, versus main brands there are like formulaic, prescriptive. How do you see they will be competing in this arena with you? Do you see, the question the other way around, do you see a better ground platform for you guys, like niche brands, like yourself, I would say, or like more single asset brands like you, Serdar? Is it a better opportunity right now for you guys? Deniz,
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely. I mean, we've always had a very strong pipeline in terms of demand. I mean, on average, we would receive probably 600 leads a year. We would only accept 5% to, quote unquote, that we call membership. I actually see a few of our owners in the audience. And this has shifted now double digits. We cannot keep up with the pipeline. They are so excited to be able to partner with an organization like us because they can keep their authenticity, they can be in charge as the owner. Now, we're not the right solution for every single asset. I have to be careful with that. But if you're an owner that wants to be hands-on and you're looking to, especially a generational asset, you have a great story to tell, and you have great management, you really don't need a chain solution. Now, having said that, obviously chain solution works well for certain assets. So I want to make sure that I don't offend any of my chain branded friends around the room. As I mentioned, you know, it is a very different solution what we offer as leading hotels of the world or similar type of, I would say, representation companies, because you really have to be a hotelier that wants to be hands-on. But it's a great opportunity for you to express your creativity, for you to be able to stay authentic, for you to be able to really surround yourself with your community. And we talked a little bit about the talent, and that's what I believe, then we can build that community and people feel proud to work at the Sumahan on the water, the Chiran Palace in Istanbul. The name, the family, the presence comes with that.
No, that's very important. Identification is totally key. So, I mean, it's vice versa, because the operator wants the team, the talents to really live the culture that you're actually providing. So it's the most authentic service also for the guest. At the other side, you know, the teams want to identify with the product and the philosophy of and that's also a trend. As, you know, consumer travel trends happen, is also, you know, talent, employee relationship trends is a different relationship that is expected. And I mean, we've been kind of competing for 12 years in the world of independent hotels. So I was leading the business and portfolio development in design hotels for 12 years and running the company the last years until I left 2 years ago. And I mean, we've seen the independent hotels, how things have been changed, you know. And you know what? Design is absolutely crucial. But when design hotels started in 1993, it was a differentiator, which it is not today anymore, because everyone can buy designer, and you work with independent as well as chain hotels today, and you're doing great. But you know, some things have simply become common sense. Yeah. They don't make you stand out anymore, because, you know, every hotel company is able to work with almost every designer and architect in the world, and the intangible experience, you know. Going back to what is the new definition of luxury, and it's you know, an ongoing involvement of that definition, and it's individual. Like mine is probably different than yours and yours and yours, and I think, I mean, what's in a world where people can more or less have everything that we're having, and we're talking luxury hospitality. Yeah. Yeah. I think the most valuable thing is actually knowledge and health, and the hotel has actually the opportunity to step into this role, to really help people, not as a pit stop where they just have a 2 weeks break from a hectic life and calm down, get sober, and then go back to the same life again, but rather than that, help them to understand how they can integrate a more healthy, balanced life. And this is where I mean, in our world, in Slow at least, where we see the focus of how we create our programs and content to engage with the clients on property and beyond.
So quick question on that. So we understand that the uniqueness, all this like experiential programmers, like basically the white canvas approach that you take for each property makes it crucial, the whole like individual identification of the each singular properties. But then how you create the DNA, how you create like that kind of image of a brand that I know what I will receive, what's the minimum delivery, I would say. Tom, would you like to touch upon that?
Sure.
I mean, you work because for like many like newly up and coming brands as well, and you kind of created the scale for them. You've been involved in that whole foundation. So how do you think they are able to create that kind of scalability, the kind of a minimum of identification? Maybe it doesn't go through the image. Maybe it goes through the service or the programming. I don't know. But
yeah, it's a good point. I think the programming is important. Yeah, we're working across the spectrum with people like Six Senses or One Hotel, who I think meld this boundary between luxury and well-being. Yeah, that's obviously a huge market now, but also a lot of independent developers, across Europe and the US as well. So I think there's a lot of different agendas on the table there for certain people, developments and brands. But how do you achieve the minimum? I think from our experience, I hate to say it, but it generally takes a bit of time and love. I think you won't probably get it right the first time around. So if you put all your kind of eggs into one basket, go for the big launch date on property number one, I would say that's probably a mistake. I think you probably need to have smaller projects, smaller maybe experiences or developments within one property to test things out without the kind of public knowing necessarily. I think then you kind of evolve it over time. Maybe your second, third, fourth property, you might actually hit the marks. I think you have to build in some time to experiment and test. That's design, I think that's brand, that's experience. It really will fluctuate. I think once you then achieve that, then I think most brands have the question about scalability. And we've worked with groups. We're working with a certain group at the moment, and they've reached a point where they're about to go public. And there's a big question mark there about, do they try to maintain the quality, or do they just go for speed? Because they can see the end date on the acquisition. So I don't think there's a definitive answer, but I do think that the test period is essential. If you don't build that in, then I think you're gonna probably fail, in my humble opinion. Yeah.
One final question about this is the financial viability. So probably you are facing, maybe not you, Dennis, because you've been like 100 years old company, but like for you, like for instance, Sardar, like, so you have these investors out there who've been tasting like mega chains, pretty like static financial forecasts, whereas you're selling more of a dream, an out-of-the-box product. What's the pitch line there? I mean, in terms of the concept, sold, and we buy it. The experience, you hit the new target market, you hit the new consumer, but financial-wise, like, what's the pitch line for that? Or you have a very narrow investor kind of a spread.
Well, I think, every investment needs a feasibility. So, I mean, even if emotionally the narrative is nice, people want to also feel, having money being invested safely and growing, of course. So, in the hospitality world, and I'm saying hospitality because also in restaurant brands a lot, what is happening in the world is many of what you're just saying. So many brands that I know, unfortunately, are growing fast for exit strategies.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the dilution that happens through this growth phase is tremendous.
Yep.
And you know what? They're still successful. I can't understand it. So they start with an amazing brand, and then after one location, they have 10 locations, and you don't feel anything of that spirit that you were actually excited about. But still, someone is still ready to buy it, to own this brand. And this is what's happening, the consolidation in the world. I mean, we're not here to do an exit. I think there is different worlds of hospitality, and Dennis and I, we have been experienced a lot of very passionate owner-managed hotels. And we know exactly why they are the best, because they bring in the soul in this place. And we talk always about scalability and scalability and scalability, but you know what? Reality is, it's not so scalable, hospitality, because every place is unique, and if you want every place to stand out, it needs an attention. It needs more than just a service. It needs passion. It needs, you know, really hard work to get there, and empathy, and aligning with the trends and the evolution. So in our world, we work with a non-exit strategy, in fact. So all our investors are joining the movement, and the strategy that we apply is we pay out high dividends.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, great point. I think, yeah, please.
If I may actually say, the reason why we are in business, and hopefully will be in business for the next 100 years, is exactly that. Our investors, actually our owners, are our member hotels. And they're not looking for a share dividend at the end of the year. What they want is every membership dollar to be put back into the membership fund to be able to make sure that we deliver the right heads and the right beds at the right time. And having said that, we spend every single dime of our member hotels into technology. Mr. Shahang spoke a little bit about the data. Technology is here. There's really nothing that you cannot operate now without the data. And what we do, organization like us, we make sure we take that data and make it meaningful for you to be able to run your hotel better. So we tell you exactly what Robin is looking for at this stay. And if Robin is staying for 5 days, Monday through Friday on business, but we see his partner is coming Saturday to, you know, and then it becomes a leisure trip. So that leisure, that concept, we're now, you know, again, it's not about business leisure group. The segments have mixed up completely now. So we as hoteliers need to be ready with our product, with our service strategy, to better understand who is this traveler coming. And as I mentioned from this example, you are a business customer for 5 days, and then suddenly you become a father for a Saturday, Sunday trip. And your role and what you're expecting from that hotel experience changes completely. So again, you know, going back about team and staff, it becomes incredibly powerful to be able to find the right people to help them understand, to read the guest, and apart from the chain standards, to really walk away from that sameness, but to deliver the service for what the guest is looking for.
I want to go back to authenticity. Because I feel like part of this experience goes through authenticity. Like providing this authentic experience, I think makes it a kind of a singular property in that specific location. So how do we deliver true authenticity? Because I think that's been anecdotal and limited in many ways. It's been always communicated. But the real delivery of that, I think there was a big delta in between those two. For instance, a small anecdote from Airbnb's CEO, actually Amerisman was here. He interviewed like 2 years ago Airbnb's CEO, and we were questioned about why do you think Airbnb has been selected more than hotels? We always thought it was like value for money, or like, I don't know, like individual designs, etc. However, it was location. He told us basically wherever there were no hotels, there were some Airbnbs, and people wanted to experience that specific micro location in that city. In Istanbul, if you say I want to like live in Arnavutköy, there is no hotel there. Or again, like there are plenty of examples like that. So there is in every city there is some commercial zones where all the hotels are like jumping there because it's high value, high like real estate. But other areas where we don't have any hotels. So I also believe the authenticity goes through like blending the citizen with the actual international traveler. Tom, like how would you elaborate on this? Like this authenticity, where it goes through? Like how do you actually deliver in a hotel?
I think it's a really difficult problem to solve. I think, you know, there's the classic response, which to some extent I guess is still true, where physically you can create a space which captures the context, right? So you can work with local makers to produce a beautiful environment which captures your imagination of that place, whether it's in Paris or whether it's in Madrid or Istanbul. I think at the same time, you know, to capture the true DNA of a space, you have to then, pull in the community. But everyone says that, you know? So it's kind of actually how do you do that properly? I think, you know, you have to create a space which isn't siloed. or doesn't have a boundary saying hotel in kind of neon signs on the outside, right? Because then the community won't go there naturally. It's just there's always this kind of immaterial barrier. So I think to create something, you have to have this kind of blend between residential, hotel, service, whether it's a bakery or a doctor even, you know, anything to do with healthcare. So I think to try to create this kind of micro community within a hotel, then you have the blend of the right people who are going to then kind of really give it the energy and the authenticity that you're trying to create. I think design is probably 35% of that, just picking a number. Mm-hmm. I think the rest of it is how it's going to be programmed and how you break down the barriers of a hotel. I think it's very, very important to do that. And that's a very, very difficult thing to do. But if you can do that successfully, then I think you're going to create something very authentic.
You've repeated the word community like several times, and we've been seeing this whole like community, like-minded people, the investment for this, it's very important. But probably until today, we had this like whole membership club idea when we talk about community, which was very kind of also exclusive idea. Today, I feel like the whole community is more inclusive, which sets the boundaries naturally, but without like a through a membership program. You have kind of a community as well, Sardar. Like, how would you elaborate on that? Is it like a more like exclusive membership, only certain people are allowed here kind of a approach, or this is a ideology, this is an approach, and whoever likes it comes with me? It's an inclusive space.
Well, yes, I mean, first of all, like the word community is so overused, but I also don't have another term for it. so we're still using it indeed. And I mean, when we talk about like, you know, this members club, I mean, in the past, hotels would have like revenue streams from events, rooms, and F&B, right? And today, you know, we go back to what hotels have been, for example, 100 years ago. They were actually leading a lifestyle, you know, retail, entertainment, all of these things have been happening. I mean, who wants to eat in a hotel restaurant in Berlin? Nobody. In some cities it works, but so these are changing. So first of all, I agree with you, like the disciplines that a hotel is offering should go beyond what a hotel is known as. We try to even not use the term hotel anymore because we think it's misguiding. And you know, the members idea is an idea that everyone talks and wants to integrate, but you know, you have to be careful. I think it's not that easy because we shouldn't cheat anyone to feel exclusive. And if you end up to have, you know, if you end up in a situation that you need 10, 20, 30 memberships to be able to go anywhere, I mean, that's a joke. Yeah. Doesn't make sense, right? Yeah, sounds like London, exactly. And the problem is that in London especially, it has been established in the culture that it's a privileged thing. But we're talking about the more conscious, more mature, more experienced, more knowledgeable traveler. I mean, these people are ready to participate in a members program and also pay for that, for its emotional value, for its connection with the other community members, but also its, let's say, tangible financial value. So I think it's really important to think twice and a few times more probably before launching one. I mean, ours is focused totally on knowledge and education. So we want to create a purpose-driven community program. Mm-hmm. And you know, invitation is by ideology and mindset and not by privileged. But we also need to limit the capacity because we cannot provide what we want to provide if we have 100,000 members. So we're rather in the amount of 10 to 20,000 members on a global scale in 10 years. Yeah. So, you know, I think it is not about excluding people for the reason of, you know, exclusivity or not feeling them privileged enough, but it's really trying to find the people that are not customers, but they participate. You know, how do they contribute into that community, which is actually what everyone wants.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's some really good points there. I think also maybe two examples we were talking about earlier of a physical manifestation of that. I think one was a hotel I went to in Athens a few years ago, and I was so excited to go to this hotel. It was Ergon House. It had a food hall with local produce on the ground floor, hotel rooms, and on each hotel room floor it had a chef's kitchen. So you could take your food from downstairs, go to the chef's kitchen and cook with other guests. So I booked in, I was like, this is going to be amazing. You know, I won't go into details, but disappointed. It didn't quite work out. You know, the same summer I went to an Airbnb, don't want to name names here, but I'm going to name names, and you know, the checklist now on Airbnb is you can go to a food hall with a local producer, you can go meet a local fisherman, you can go on a Vespa in Milan. So I went and shopped with a local farmer for the afternoon with my wife, and it's the best afternoon I've had in years. And all that was an afternoon with a stranger, you know, and there's no physical space. I think it's two great examples there of how it can work.
But I actually think, you know, the success of the Airbnbs, which we are all seeing, and it's truly there, yeah, is you know, related to many things. So it's not just about authenticity and, you know, become local upon arrival, because in the end of the day, if I travel, I also don't want to sit alone in an apartment somewhere in an apartment building.
That's true.
Even in Arnavutköy.
Yeah.
So the reality is that, you know, the success of Airbnb is for many reasons that they have been smart, but also because the hotel industry just doesn't pick up what the guests want. And, you know, we're seeing, you know, while we've been traveling every weekend for 1 night, 2 nights, or even lunch trip to Paris, Barcelona, and wherever, and have been there 20, 30, 40 times, which is boring, we're looking for something else. So people tend to travel less and stay longer. But that also requires a different space, that requires a different size of room, a different floor plan of a room. How can I maybe even host guests in my hotel room? Yeah. And I think, you know, all of these need to be considered. That's why you know, the service apartment concept is growing crazily right now in the lifestyle premium luxury segments. And the ideal version is you have rooms that you can connect to them, so you can have a 1-bedroom apartment, but you know what, when your friends come, you can just, and that's your job, open the door and you have a 3-bedroom apartment, but you share the same living room and the kitchen. But this is all embedded in a hospitality concept that is holistic. And I think these are the things that will be more attractive than taking an Airbnb apartment, where, I mean, I'm not a big fan, although I respect a lot what they're doing. I still do think, though, that the hotel industry or hospitality has a much, much, much bigger chance to engage with these guests.
True, true. Probably we can say that actually we have all the tools, but we've been very slow in adapting ourselves for this customer's needs.
Well, I'm not sure it's slow. I mean, I need to say, you know, I've been in touch with chain hotels in the past years, because we have been, you know, Design Hotels was a public listed company, and at some point in 2012, Starwood had become a shareholder, and later on Marriott. And, you know, I respect both of these companies. They are super smart in what they're doing. But, you know, what they don't do is, like, they talk about the guest being the most important asset. And as you say, the information around the guest is the most important asset. It's actually more valuable than real estate today. But in reality, they're not thinking how to please the guest. So I was pretty shocked in my first, you know, meetings with Marriott and Starwood in the headquarters that there is actually no money spent without having a return. So why not building a laboratory, a research and development department that seriously engages with ideas? Every new idea that's been developed has to be implemented somewhere and have to bring a return. But I think the return would be so much higher if you just, and that's why I'm saying I don't think it's slow. I just think that people still ignore it.
Ignore it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's actually dramatic.
It is. It is. Maybe, hopefully, it's the end of the cut and paste era, and hopefully some curation, a dawn for the curation. Hopefully. I want to touch upon also on sustainability. It's been a big consumer decision driver, especially for the last couple of years. Again, with the pandemic accelerated. It's been there for a long while, but it's been, again, a very limited implementation from the hotel side. I'm not talking like from, I'm talking about the majority, let's say. So the communicated message was way beyond of the actual delivery. However, today, it seems like it's slightly beyond being conscious, but it's also a factor in being successful in business. So Deniz, I want to first ask you that, how do you see that changing in the industry overall, both for everyone in every player?
I mean, first of all, I think it's table stakes. At this point, we all should know and understand at a global scale what are the UN SDGs are, but I'm not suggesting, as especially an owner and investor, you have to do all 17. That, I think, goes into greenwashing, which I believe you would get more of a reaction if you don't do it well. But pick one. pick one that's meaningful to you, pick one that's meaningful for your team. And for example, for us, you know, life on land and life underwater are two that we're working on currently. And even if I just ask the 400 hotels, stop using one-time plastic, that's a huge difference. Or if I loved hearing what Mr. Shahing was doing, opening a hotel school. Like if you can just pick one and be great at it, I think that actually would be my recommendation, but you cannot ignore it. I can tell you by fact that 25% of our Leaders Club, we call them our consumers, our curious travelers, are willing to pay more than 20% on rate, on ADR, which our global ADR is $800, so it's not cheap. But they're willing to pay even 20% more if they know the hotel has a practice under sustainability. But we've been there, we've done it incorrectly in the very beginning, and we've been, you know, I think greenwashing is something that we have to be conscious of not doing. So what I would recommend is there's great resources and tools available for us, but just pick one or two that is meaningful to you and just start small.
I think this is a great point because, I mean, we've been lucky to work with some investors that have been like very, through their own conscience, like willing to invest in an extra money, like to make the property more sustainable. However, like today is beyond their own conscience. It has also a financial impact. As you say, I mean, your rate is kind of higher once you become like in that way. So how do you think we should like deliver this message, Tom, like to the investors? Because investors until today, this message seemed kind of like just a blah blah blah for them. It wasn't like very convincing, and they were very resistant towards like putting that extra effort, extra investment towards the sustainability.
I think, you know, to Denise's point, there's clear data showing that consumers are willing to spend more. Simple as that, right? So for an investor, that's a pretty strong argument. I think between 20 and 40%. I think at the same time, it's a generational thing. I think the next slew of people going to come to a hotel just won't stay there, you know. So I think, you know, they might quickly see a pretty rapid drop because other brands will pick it up pretty quickly and will just go there, right? So I think brand loyalty will disappear unless you orientate it towards a sustainable goal. I think the last thing, I think in my view, probably is geography, right? We probably all flew here at some point, you know, the last few days. I think we've probably all stayed or gone for vacation the last 3 years in our home countries more than we ever have in the last 5 years, I'm assuming as well. So I think the market domestically is quite intriguing, I think, to me as well. You know, it's how people are actually going to spend more time locally, create a more sustainable community, and less time, you know, going further afar. Might become more limited, like you said. Maybe 2 weeks a year is that very special time, rather than 12 times a year, you know, for a short time.
I think that's exactly the trend that we're seeing. We see like more like frequent staycations, like nearby like locations, where we reach without like having some like gas emission with the flights, but by just driving, and then longer stays internationally, which overall just diminishes the impact on the pollution and etc. So I think that's where the trend is like moving towards too. So I think that's what I have overall for you guys. And if you like don't have any more comments to add, I would like to open the floor for any questions. Any questions? Tolga Bey there. Do we have a microphone?
It's okay. Actually, I just wanted to elaborate on the 20% incremental potential rate increase for the sustainability you mentioned. I mean, is that just something that you ask as a survey, or have you actually realized that, okay, here is, let's say, $100, according to your rates, let's say $800 room, and then here's a $960 option where it's I don't know with what options, but it's a sustainable version, or maybe it's two different hotels. One is $800, and the other $960, but sustainable one. And have you actually seen that people actually paid for it, rather than just saying, oh yes, we would love to pay 20% more if we don't see any plastics around?
Yeah, no, this is a great question. This specific data is survey-based. So, but we've done this because we realized post-COVID that we have to be more intentional in the way that we actually pick a few of the strategies to be able to create more of a loud, I would say, difference. So this one, what I just gave, the 25% of our customers willing to spend more, 20% more on the rate, was actually survey-based. But I suspect that if that's what they're saying, maybe it's not 20%, but I do believe that they're still going to pay a little bit of a premium to know that what they're doing actually contributes to the health of the world and the environment. But great question.
I would like to add something to that because, you know, I mean, we've been doing similar researches and we could actually also more experience that it's happening. But the question is not about are people going to invest more in the room stay if we go one step further in sustainability. The question is more like, will I have guests in the future if I don't do it? Because, you know, what you were saying is so right, and I work together with a trend forecasting institute from London, which is called the Future Laboratory. And we recently had a workshop together talking about the next generation. And you know what? I count myself as young, I'm 44, but I have no clue what's going to happen. And I tell you, it's going to be very exciting to hear and see how new generations think. And I have a very young team, consciously, and they learn me, they teach me how we should do things, and I totally agree and accept it. I mean, I can tell you, your hotel will simply be empty.
No, I totally agree by the way on sustainability. And we have a small hotel, and since a couple of years, you know, we try to eliminate all the plastics, you know, with the dispenser type soaps, and we're not giving any water bottles, but we're giving refills in rooms, even though it was a bit problematic during the pandemic. But, you know, my question was just, I think, also to elaborate on whether we will have guests or not if we're not sustainable. I think whether we will be around if we're not sustainable, we could even ask that. But yeah, I mean, my question was, I think we also, sometimes currently I see that we also sort of greenwash the numbers as well. I mean, even as I said, I totally believe that we have to go sustainable. Like, I mean, we have napkins in paper napkins right now, in other paper bags here, which is interesting. But yeah, I mean, so hopefully we'll see less and less of these. As I said, I was just asking whether we have actual proofs of those numbers, and just sorry to take it longer, but I think when you look on the investment side, actually most of the time sustainable options, especially on the longer term, are better in cost-wise. I mean, I haven't seen any sustainable option that costs you more in the long term. It's always also saves you money as well.
It's not easy, you know, especially depends where you are, in which country, which city, which remote destination. It's really a difficult topic to handle. But it's, you know, I think, you know, sustainability and luxury are absolutely one thing in the future. And I mean, what we've seen, we've been launching a sustainability-related operations program in 2012, and it was far too early, so we had to stop it because hotels didn't participate. Funnily, 6-7 years later, they were asking us, why don't we do a program around sustainability? But we could already see that, you know, we're talking about lifestyle luxury tourism, okay? So, I mean, I'm not saying this counts for every corner of tourism, but we're talking about lifestyle luxury tourism, and this is about identification with the community, identification with the product, which is not only a rational, it's also an emotional decision. And you know, the information, the rational information is a little path that goes to your brain. The emotional information is a 10-line highway. And you know, it really makes you take the decisions. And we've been seeing in the world of design hotels, for example, that aesthetics and culture have always created the premium. Hotels in Barcelona, Paris, London, wherever you count them, they would outperform the most luxurious hotels in rates by actually lower quality of room and size and things that, but the identification of people to be part of this place is so strong. And that's something that the hotel industry is somehow missed out a little bit, because when you go to a bar, you're going for the atmosphere, the design, the music, the nice cocktails, but actually you're going there to be with the crowd you want to have your drinks with. And the hotel is exactly the same. And that's about values, and sustainability simply has become a value for the new generation that is non-arguable.
Absolutely. I think just a small addition. When you add the authenticity to sustainability, I think that's where you sort of get it 360, because maybe sometimes according to the location you might not be fully sustainable. You know, there are preventions.
Never.
It's impossible. But
it's impossible.
if you're authentic and you're honest with it, okay, we do this,
Yeah.
but currently we're not able to, let's say, eliminate plastic bottles because there are no other hygienic options, but we're doing best we can in an authentic way. I think it also creates that connection with the guests.
Good. Any final question? I was told in IHIF that to finish it on time is even more important than the conversation itself. So we're right there, I think.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, guys.
Hoppa. Son dakika